everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show, Wednesday, November 8th edition. And we've got some NBA news to get into. As usual, there's always something going on in the NBA, but we also are going to get into some cap space projections for next season. Never too early to look ahead to what teams can do some big things this coming summer. And I think it's going to inform some of what we're going to see happen at this year's trade deadline as well. So a lot of stuff to talk about. If you haven't done so yet, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button over on the YouTube channel, pushing for 30,000 subscribers. Help us out there. Hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications and like this video as well. Podcast listeners, we certainly would appreciate a 5-star rating and review. You know, Keith, I went back in and read some of the Apple Podcast reviews. Always so cool to go through those and get feedback from people on there. I love reading those.
Yeah, I do too. I just actually pulled a couple up here, and it was just a lot of a lot of comments of like, it's unbelievable being that a Celtics fan and a Lakers fan can
That's
do
right.
this on a daily basis. So oh, there we go. We got a little breaking news coming in here.
I'm not gonna hit the button, but you saw I got so behind the curtain. You guys saw Keith got distracted for a second there as he was talking. I got distracted, and the reason why is because both of us, whenever news comes out, we drop everything, we pay attention to it. This is the news that literally just broke as Keith was speaking there. Shams Charania, no surprise, said, as part of the meeting today with general managers, the NBA has discussed the possibility of extending the draft format to 2 days, beginning as soon as 2024, sources tell The Athletic. The concept has been increasingly discussed in recent meetings as team executives believe they could better utilize more time for both first and second rounds. So let's think about some of the ramifications of that. Let's say they go to 2 days and round one is day one and round two is day two. Which I would imagine is how it would work out. I would hope. So let's say you do that. Round one's day one, round two is day two. And let's say instead of right now you have 5 minutes between picks, let's say you go NFL style and let's say you double it and you do 10 minutes between picks. Do you think we see more trades as a result? Because that could be overall a net win for the NBA if we do.
Yeah, I mean, it's always possible, right? I think especially in the second round, you could see more movement because there's just a little bit more time.
Second round is what, 3 minutes?
3
minutes between picks.
You also wouldn't see Nikola Jokic get drafted during a Taco Bell commercial, I would hope.
That's true.
We'd actually get to see every pick. With that, I would say the thing that becomes interesting is, and a lot of people don't know this, and let's just peek behind the curtain, as draft picks are being traded around. A lot of these trades, obviously, during the draft involve a draft pick. Mm-hmm. So what happens in those situations is when they are getting moved, if it's that night's draft, some of those trades are not actually executed until much later.
Right.
So what ends up happening in those situations was they come in and it turns into a spot where it is how do I phrase this? Teams don't know who actually owns those picks, because
it can be difficult to keep track of.
Yeah, so the NBA, they're just like us in this case. Mm-hmm. Usually what they do, it's usually a front office intern. Sorry, I was getting distracted by a text. The front office, they assign a front office intern to track all of the draft picks. And basically what they do is they continually update the draft board. First round, not so hard, right? Those ones don't fly around quite as much. Second round picks, so sometimes they'll change hands 2 or 3 times in the same night.
Yeah.
And even though these trades aren't official, the NBA doesn't have like a backdoor like website where they track it for all of the teams and say, hey, actually the 24th pick, the Clippers don't own it now, the Timberwolves do. That's actually, was part of this trade, because the NBA doesn't recognize it until the trade is official. So the teams have to do it themselves. So the teams do that, much like that's what I spend a chunk of my night doing is, all right, who actually owns the pick? And I have it set up so I know, all right, it's going to say the Clippers are drafting, but that pick is actually being made for the Timberwolves. And I put that off to the side in a spreadsheet so I know. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. So I think that increases the chances of more madness kind of in the second round as they move around. I think another piece of this could be second round picks, draft picks in general, but especially second round picks with the advent of the new second round pick exception. Could become even more valuable to the teams that are up and over the second apron. So the super tax teams, as we've been calling them, because you're so limited in how you can add talent elsewise. You're pretty much limited to minimum contracts and draft pick signings. That's it if you're signing guys from outside of the organization. So that becomes a whole other level that we could see take on importance that it just doesn't have today. And that would be really kind of interesting to see if that is part of this is, hey, we need a little bit more time because rather than just draft a guy, we'll throw him on a two-way or, we won't even sign him or whatever. There could be a sense of, hey, these picks may be more important than ever.
NBA folks, if you happen to need anybody to organize those draft picks, I volunteer the NBA front office show as tribute. We can work something out.
Yeah.
Just give us, give us a call here.
You don't even need to pay us. You can just send us some gear. Like I'm always down for free gear. Like just, to send a hoodie or something. Like that's good enough.
Keith, you are a terrible, terrible negotiator. Come on.
Not even going to negotiate it. Just
come on.
Yeah, man. They'll give an intern that job, and then that intern will put it on a resume and off it'll go. But
at the very least, I want a link to the NBA front office show on NBA.com on the website, right up top. I want something sent out on NBA social. Let's blow this thing up. I think if they do that, okay, all right, then we'll do it. We need more than just a hoodie.
I'm happy with a hoodie, but all right, if you want to drive a hard bargain. I should apologize.
This is why we need agents. This is why we need agents.
Yeah, for real. I should apologize to anybody. You're going to hear me sniffle and cough and sneeze throughout the course of this show. My 45-year streak of getting sick after every time I've taken a plane flight remains intact. So I picked up some form of cold while flying either to or from Phoenix.
Not ideal. Not ideal. Well, plus going from the crazy humid climate of Orlando into the insanely dry climate of Phoenix and then back, that probably, does a job on you as well.
I'm going to guess it was a guy who sat next to me and coughed the entire flight from Atlanta to Phoenix, maybe, but we'll see.
Blame him. So if they do this, obviously the ratings will be much better for day one.
Sure.
It gives them more time to keep track of things. Perhaps it offers more opportunities for trades for teams to get stuff done there. But I don't think this is the worst idea, just off the top of my head, just as we're kind of reacting to this news. I don't think it's a terrible idea for them to do this, but I do wonder how much of I would assume the ratings drop significantly when we start the second round anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much of like a dud the second round would be in terms of how many people are paying attention to it, but for the league, in terms of get things done and being able to actually keep track of everything that's happening, because like you said, those second round picks get passed around like crazy. This probably would be a good thing for them.
Yeah, I'm not against the idea. It'd be, you try it, right? It's fine. I'm perfectly content to let's see what it looks like. Let's see how this plays out over the course of a draft period here. If it is 2 days long, no real issue with that. If that's what they want to do, it's fine. I mean, I'm curious. Like we just speculated, like this could be cause this to happen or not. So yeah, I'm perfectly fine with it. It gives us a chance to catch up. Maybe what you still get is a 3-hour draft show, but 2 hours for the first round. And then that second hour or third hour rather becomes, hey, let's analyze what happened a little bit more, because what happens is you step all over the second round because it's constantly on TV going back. Hey, let's talk about, what did, the Oklahoma City Thunder with 3 draft picks actually do in the first round? And then you're just kind of skipping over second rounders and all that. But yeah, I think the combination of the second round, far less interest because those guys are either in general starting at the bottom of a roster or nowadays the back half of the second round on 2-way contracts. And it's also much later at night, right? Second round's quite often
Mhm.
like 10 to midnight is when it's playing out. So I think, especially on the East Coast, people are dropping off. But yeah, the downside is just, for people like us, it just compresses that like week between the draft and the start of free agency. It adds one more day of stuff in there to do it, but it's, that's fine. We can work around that and figure it all out. So
Right.
yeah, I'm not against it, if that's what they want to do.
All right, let's jump into some of our news for today. Some of the news we had planned. Terrence Mann sounds like he's going to play. Keith, a lot of people trying to make something out of the Knicks beating the Clippers and saying, "Oh, the Clippers got James Harden, they still can't." This kind of happens when you throw a team together, even if it's a talented team. It
Yep.
takes some time for them to figure things out and pick up any steam. Like remember the Big Three Miami Heat took a little while. They weren't they like 10-10 or something
Yeah,
through the
it's
first
something like
20,
that.
something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
It just takes time so I'm not going to overreact to that. But Terrence Mann coming back for the Clippers, that's going to be a positive for them. He's a guy who obviously they fought hard to hang on to, and I think he will be. Not that he's going to start, but he will be an important part of their rotation.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't know, right, if he is going to start, because that was
Yeah.
what Ty Lue had said initially, was Terrence Mann was going to be a starter this year. He's going to be that fifth starter in there for them. My guess is probably comes off the bench, at least initially, as they build him up and get him fully game ready, and then we'll see if he, ultimately, would be Russell Westbrook's spot that he would take
Mhm.
in the starting five. So that'll be something to watch. I thought it was I think it was Law Murray from the Athletic, who covers the Clippers. I think he was the one too. He also said the Mason Plumlee injury seemed to take a lot of steam out of the team, and we often see that. Sometimes if a player suffers a really bad injury, the rest of the guys, like, it can be a little hard to focus. And I don't want to take any credit away from the Knicks, because they
No.
played very well. They defended extremely well in that game. And if you're the Knicks, you probably had a little extra juice too, right? Like, hey, everybody's tuning in to watch the new look Clippers and
Right.
watch them take us down. Like, we're ready to get after it too. So yeah, I'm not going to make any sweeping generalizations about the Clippers. Let's see, where it goes. I'm very curious to see how they cover for Mason Plumlee now, because they do have two open roster spots. One will go to Josh Primo, as we know, here eventually, pretty soon, and then they're going to have one other one. I do kind of wonder if the Josh Primo thing, maybe that's not happening now, because
Mm.
it didn't happen yet.
Right.
There could be any number of reasons. It could just be, hey, let's save on the tax bill and just do it when we have to do it. I believe it's next Wednesday that they have to do that until. So that could be part of it here. But I think for now it's just going to be a little bit of, hey, let's see what it looks like. PJ Tucker probably assumes the backup five position behind Ivica Zubac, and that's been fine for years anyway. So but good that Terrence Mann is back in the lineup. He's a good, helpful, productive player for them, and they do have a little bit of rotation depth to rebuild in LA after the Harden trade.
All right. Another team getting a player back. Pretty important player, by the way. Bradley Beal has not played yet this season, but could be back. Well, been dealing with a back injury. He could be back tonight for the Suns. We'll see. If not, he's probably going to return just in time to play my Lakers on Friday. Bradley Beal should be back in action, and that'll give Phoenix their big three. Assuming Devin Booker's been in and out, so if he's able to go, but obviously this is big for Phoenix if they can finally get him in there. It's they weren't planning on having him miss so much time here to start the season, but hopefully he's 100% now, and they can start building some chemistry as a new team.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for Bradley Beal, the challenge becomes just getting integrated, right? And the health issues are always what they are, right? We know he's going to be a good bet to miss some games, but now it's just getting on the court, getting integrated, and being out there with the rest of the guys. And then I think the other piece is Devin Booker, whatever's going on with this, like, it seems like it keeps migrating around whatever this injury is that he
Yeah.
is working through in the I don't know who, but I saw a handful of people tweeted, so I don't know who to credit as first, but just call it a lower body injury, because there's clearly something going on in
Mm-hmm.
his leg, and we don't really know what it is. But that'll be interesting to see how that plays out when you finally get all three of them on the floor. And this was the thing we talked about all summer long. This looks awesome on paper when you have all of them, but you
Yeah.
start you're betting on three guys who have fairly lengthy injury histories, and you're gonna have to build that in. The Suns did okay building up their depth, really pretty great considering they were really working with only minimum contracts. But you're pressing guys like Eric Gordon into playing a lot, and some other players who ideally they'd probably be 15, 20-minute a night guys that are having to go 25 and 30 minutes right now because these guys are out. So I still continue to say 50-ish games is probably the max we see all three of these guys on the court together. And then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, agreed. But you know what? They're going to be concerned with the postseason. If they get all three on the court for the playoffs and they have enough, if it's 50-ish games, if that's enough time for them to build the chemistry they need for the postseason, they'll be more than fine with that trade-off. So,
yeah.
But again, you got to have, there has to be enough overlap with the three of them on the floor for them to have that chemistry, that cohesiveness for the postseason. So far, not a good start. The Bradley Beal's missed so many games already, and Devin Booker as well has been missing games, but they all come together, they can really take off. All right, let's get to you, Mason. You mentioned Mason Plumlee. He is still out indefinitely at this point. Clippers may not have certainty exactly just yet until on when he's going to be back. And I wonder what that's going to mean for them at the backup center position. Could there be a move coming there, or do they just try to get by for the time being?
Yeah, I forgot we had this as a topic, and I stepped on it while we were talking about Terrence Mann. But yeah, it's PJ Tucker for now, and then let's see. So I do wonder they've got an open roster spot. My guesses are probably looking a little bit. The big man group it's not great right now. I do kind of wonder if they're like, man, we maybe should have just kept Philip Petrusev instead of flipping him over to the Kings. So we'll see. But it's a spot you can fill. Ideally, a guy like Bismack Biyombo could have filled it, but he's clearly now off the market. So we'll see. My guess is that remains a spot they maybe target in free trade season when it opens up. If they want to make a deal, maybe they try to go out and get another center, because they really, once they got Plumlee, that solidified that position last year. That's when the team started to have a lot more stability up front, because you essentially Zubac and Plumlee, you've got your 40, let's call it 45-ish minutes a night, unless you go small to maybe close out games. And right now, the closing out games option, PJ Tucker probably out there if you want to go small, and you're not going against like Jokic or another center like that. So we'll see. But for now, yeah, Plumlee's going to be out for a while. It looks like we'll see when he eventually works his way back.
All right, another injury. So many injuries right now.
Yeah,
Jordan McLaughlin out 4 weeks with a sprained MCL. And remember, I feel like I might as well just record this and just play it over and over again. He's going to be reevaluated in 4 weeks. Reevaluate doesn't mean return, but that'll be an absence here for the Wolves.
Yeah, and I'm not laughing, obviously, at the Jordan McLaughlin part. I'm just laughing at Trevor. This is much more of a Lakers Nation thing where he gets rightfully picked on still, even on some of our live shows, for saying the reevaluate doesn't mean ready to play.
Because otherwise I get a bunch of people going, it said 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks. Where is the guy?
Yeah.
That's,
Jordan McLaughlin, though, he's a guy consistently been in and out of the rotation for the Timberwolves, more out than in so far this season. They've been going with Shake Milton as more or less the de facto backup point guard that they tend to, when Mike Conley's off the floor, run a lot of the offense through Anthony Edwards more so, and then Nickeil Alexander-Walker can play. Backup guards is probably the shakiest spot for the Wolves depth wise right now. If you look at kind of their team, they've obviously got bigs, they've got some forwards that they can play with. The Alexander Walker's the only guy I feel super confident in, and McLaughlin being out only hurts that more so. And this is a team that's not super well positioned to take on a lot of money in a trade, just because of how wildly expensive their roster is going to be next season.
Yeah, that's something that is. Well, again, they've got a very expensive roster. They're all in on this group. I don't know if you saw Rudy Gobert address the comments that he's still hearing about the trade and all that. And he's like, I didn't make the trade. Like, he's like, he said people would make comments to him, and he's like, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. which is
Yeah,
funny.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah, if I'm Rudy Gobert, I'm kind of just, walking through this idea of, hey man, I just show up and play. Like they told me you don't play for Minnesota or for Utah anymore. You play in Minnesota, and it is what it is.
All right, let's jump over to the Pistons. They're going to sign Kevin Knox. Sounds like that's going to be a 1 year deal. No details just yet, but I'd imagine that's probably going to be a non-guaranteed deal.
Yeah, that would be my guess is most likely. Now the Pistons had one open standard roster spot. They have a lot of injuries, so that's probably part of what the coverage is here for this. Bogdanovich is still out and gonna be out for at least probably another week or two. Alec Burks has been down. Isaiah Livers is out. Monte Morris is out. Jalen Duren's been in and out of the lineup the last week with a couple injuries and an illness. Jaden Ivey is dealing with an illness. So you run into a spot where you just start to need bodies available. So that's my guess is fill it with a guy they know, a guy who actually played somewhat well for them, and get Kevin Knox back out there on the floor.
Kevin Knox just never been the same after that summer league run-in with Zion Williamson, and that was his first NBA experience. And oh, Kevin Knox, that was a rough moment, and he's just
Caused
never
an
been.
earthquake.
There was an earthquake. He's
Of
just
all
never been able
things.
to bounce back
That's
from
it.
that. And while we're on the topic, though, Zion Williamson is actually out now. Fortunately, it's not with an injury. It's just due to it says a personal issue, whatever that is. Obviously, hopefully everything is okay. We don't know what the issue is or what's going on. At least I don't know as of this moment. But Zion Williamson will be out for tonight's game for the Pelicans. And again, sigh of relief that it's not an injury, but hope everything is okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's it's good in the sense that it's not an injury, and
Yeah.
to your point, yeah, let's just hope that it's nothing, nothing serious that's going to keep him out more than a game.
Keith, I
And the
always think
Pelicans,
it's
I mean, God, they're we'll talk about running into not having enough players, and they're in a spot too where I believe. Let me double check. They also have an open roster spot, but they're over the luxury tax line, so they really don't want to take on any money if they can avoid it, because
right.
the challenge for them comes in. Then that's more money you need to shed if you want to get under the tax line. And they may be, I have to double check this stat. They're at least one of two that have never paid the luxury tax, and they may be the only team that has never paid the luxury tax. I don't think this year's team is the team they're going to go into the tax for. But if you were to fill the spot, just to have enough bodies, that's more money you need to shed later if you're trying
Mm-hmm.
to duck under the tax line. So that becomes very, very tricky for them to deal with right now. They just kind of you got to get through it here over the next little bit. Obviously, CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy, those are the two longer term injuries, along with Najee Marshall for the Pelicans.
Keith, I wish there was a designation when a player is out for personal reasons. There's some way so that it doesn't, because when I see personal, I automatically, and maybe it's just me, I automatically think negative. I
Yeah.
automatically think, oh God, something bad happened in their family,
Mm-hmm.
or something like that has happened. And then you've got like Derek White, who keeps being listed out as personal. His child was born,
Yeah.
right? Like,
So it's a good thing. Yeah.
yeah, it's a good thing. He's having a baby. I wish there was a way to like designate between the two, because I see it pop
Personal
up.
good, personal
Yeah,
bad. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I see it pop up on the reports, and it's like Derek White out personal or whatever. And my initial reaction is negative, and then I got to remind myself, oh no, wait, he's having a that's like the best reason to miss a game.
Did you see dipping into the NFL side of the world? They had their trade deadline, I think, a week or two ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not like the NBA trade
No,
deadline. It
it's not.
never has been, but there was a few trades made, and they had one guy, and then they have to do their daily injury reports, and like starting on Wednesday, I think it is,
Mm-hmm.
for the weekend games, and they listed out one of the guys who was traded. It was he did not practice, and the reason was he just got here. Like I thought that was pretty funny.
I wish. Remember when that reminds me of the Spurs. DNP old
Yeah,
with Tim Duncan.
DNP old.
I
Yeah,
wish the NBA was had a little bit more fun with that kind of
yeah, a
stuff.
little bit of sense of humor on it. Yeah,
Yeah, because I have a feeling you wouldn't get away with that in the NBA.
yeah, no, and it is. We do see
It's
now that they
different.
do allow teams to list, especially trade deadline day. You'll see because that's always a weird day.
Yeah.
One of my favorites because you get all these goofy lineups if a team like fully remakes their roster. But I you do occasionally see like out trade pending. Like that's why
Yeah.
they're inactive or whatever. But yeah, it is. Yeah, let them have a little bit of but good old DNP old. Like, come on, that's just
Why
funny.
not?
And we
Yeah,
all know
especially
the reason, right? Like,
and you know what? As somebody who reads through countless number of these things throughout the season, it's just a little kind of funny bit in there, kind of bright because it can be dry. You're looking through all of these out
yeah,
ankle, out, knee, whatever, and to see DNP old, it's just like, oh hey, something to look at besides just the standard stuff.
yeah,
Okay, Keith, let's get into your cap space projections here for
yeah.
next season. Let's talk a little bit about that and which teams should have space right now. Obviously, not a super long list of teams here, but this is now when you're doing this. Is this are you looking at what players are most likely to do? Like if there's a player option and you're trying to decide, hey, you're making that decision for them. I believe this player is going to opt in, or I believe this player is going to opt out, and that's how you're getting your number, or how are you calculating this?
Yeah, you're spot on it. So what I do is you start with basically I build out a big spreadsheet and I drop in all the guaranteed salaries because we don't project any trades or waivers with this unless it's a non-guaranteed player or a player that there is a strong indication, and that would not be this far out. That would be more when we do
Mhm.
updates to this in April, May, June area, that they're going to waive and stretch a guy to create cap space. So I do that. I go through all of the player and team options. I make a projection on all of them. I go through all of the partial and non-guaranteed contracts, make a projection on all of those. I use ESPN's BPI for the projected standings at the end of the year to build the draft order. And then obviously all the draft pick conditions for who could get
Mhm.
what picks and all that to determine those cap holds. And then I put it all in and come out with these are the teams I think are most likely to have cap space this summer.
Sorry, I was
I
looking through
muted so I
some
didn't
I was
sneeze into the
I was
mic.
looking through some numbers, so I was on a different screen, and suddenly Keith is gone, and I go, oh, did he drop out? I click over just in time to see the you recoiling in sneeze fury. Um,
Yeah, this is going to be a good screen cap show for anybody between me sneezing and blowing my nose throughout the course of the show. It's my MJ flu game, baby.
Here we
Let's go.
go. Here we go.
Um,
Uh,
So yes, so that's how I get to the cap space projections for each of these teams. You only see 7 here because usually only 7 teams I predict will have or project is a better way of putting it to have cap space this coming summer.
right.
Every other team I project to be over. Seven's right around in range, but you can see I have some notes on 4 through 7.
Yeah.
So really, I'm only projecting 3 teams that have cap space, and that's twofold. We've seen extensions are the way now in the
Mhm.
NBA. More guys extend, and then the way roster movement happens is via trade. And then we've had a compression of the market a little bit, where some teams spent money this year that maybe wouldn't have otherwise to make sure they're within the rules in the new CBA and all that. So you've got the push down from the top with the second apron rules, and then you've got the push up on the bottom. So these are the 7 teams with this. If there's any you want to talk about individually, I'm happy to dive in on these. And then if there's any teams you're like, where is the popular question is, where are the Oklahoma City Thunder?
Yeah.
We could talk about those ones too.
Well, I guess where I want to start is market and a renegotiate and extend, and that's something where you'd actually dip into your available cap space to do
Exactly.
so. We saw the Pacers do that last year, and
Yep.
that's something
Jordan
that I
Jazz
think.
did it last year too with Jordan Clarkson.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
I thought so. In the Pacers situation last year, they were below the salary floor, and that's part of why it
Correct.
made all the sense in the world for them to do it, because it was money that was already going to be spent. That obviously, now that you have to reach the salary floor by the beginning of the season, that incentive is sort of taken away. How do you see Utah's motivation to do this now? They're not a below the salary floor team. Do they still have that kind of just natural motivation to try to get this done, or are they better off just waiting for the summer?
Yeah, so just so everybody knows with what Trevor's talking about, once you hit the the first day of the regular season, the NBA puts a cap hold on your books if you're under the salary floor, which brings you up to the salary floor. So in the case of the Pacers last year and the Spurs, they were sitting miles and miles under the
Mhm.
salary floor. And then the Spurs took on money in trades. The Pacers, as Trevor mentioned, used up most of their available space to renegotiate and extend Miles Turner. This is one of the only forms of renegotiation you can do in the
Mhm.
NBA is you use existing cap space to bump a player's contract up, and then you add some years onto it. So in the case of the Pacers, they did the last ever in season one of those that I think we'll ever see, because now everybody's got to get to that salary floor number before the season starts. But in the off season, we saw the Utah Jazz, as I mentioned, did it with Jordan Clarkson, and then the Sacramento Kings did it with Domantas Sabonis. They used a chunk of their cap space this summer to renegotiate and extend Sabonis. And in Sabonis's case, they brought him all the way up to the max and then extended him for the max off of that.
Mhm.
In Clarkson's case, they brought him basically what it was like, hey, here's what we want to give you. Like, I'm making it up, but like, we want to give you 45 million over the next 3 seasons. We want to give a bunch of it to you right now this year because we can. And then we're going
Yeah.
to put two lower numbers on the books for each of the next 2 years. So the Jazz could go into the summer marketing's about 18, 19 million on the books this coming summer. They could use a large chunk of that 36.4 million, bring him up to even all the way up to his max number, and then use the rest of it to do other stuff with it. With that, I want to touch on Philly too, if I can, real quick,
Sure.
because there's been a lot of stuff out there. I know I talked about it a while back about how Philly could have two max salary slots this summer. That was never a real thing. That was never going to be a thing. If long as they had Embiid and Maxey on the books, they weren't going to be able to get to enough to have two max salary slots. But there's still a lot of people like I thought they were going to be at 50 or 60 million. What I'm projecting here is, and some of it's based off of some things Daryl Morey said recently, is I'm projecting them to keep D'Anthony Melton on the books too,
Uh-huh.
his cap hold, as well as Paul Reed's non-guaranteed contract. They picked up Jaden Springer's option, and they have a draft pick coming. So you factor all that in, that all eats into their cap space and drops them down into the range I have them here, just under 40 million. And I think what Daryl Morey's most recent comment signal too is he said, I may want to use some of that flexibility early, which means go trade for a guy this year. And then, yeah, hey, we're not going to have 40 million in cap space, right? We're going to go get a guy
Right.
now versus waiting and doing it. We like to call that pre-agency,
Right.
right? So
Spend your
that's
money
kind of
now.
where that is. Exactly. So I think that's just all a sign of Maury's basically saying, hey, there may not be the free agents worth like conserving all of this to go spend it on one dude this summer and then have to still fill out 10 roster spots. I think he's more saying, yeah, we have our little core of Embiid, Maxey, Reed, maybe Melton. I'm factoring in there, and then we move it forward from there. So that's just kind of where Philly's projection lands.
Well, and I guess that's that this all leads us into, the free agent class because that's what you can use this money to do other. You can use it to facilitate trades. It doesn't just have to be spent on free agent money.
Exactly.
But typically, when you see teams hoarding cap space, it's because they have a grand design to add one or more players on the free agent market. Which, of course, that's become less and less of a thing. As you said, it's become more about extensions and things of that
Yep.
nature and getting things done that way. So I just want to take a quick peek here over on Spot Track the at the free agent class currently, and this is ranked by dollar amount. So this is not like the top free agents of the class. This is based on dollar amount of the current contract. But you look at this, and those teams, we say, yeah, there's not that many teams that have cap space. There's not a lot of guys that you look at and say teams are going to be climbing over themselves to hand them a full max deal right now.
And if you actually click on where it says player,
Uh-huh.
and sort it there, that should pull it into that's good. Click it one more time because it reverse sorts first. This will sort it just showing people like you could sort all of our spot track data
Uh-huh.
a lot of different ways. One of the things you're not going to see just yet because we're still working through it is pulling in all of the players with options and all
Yeah.
of those kind of things here. So that'll
This
all
is
get pulled in here eventually up here. So if you do
right.
just do the drop down, you're on it.
And check RFA.
I think you could drop it down and do even more than that.
Okay, let me see. Because
Um,
here's restricted free agents that we add to the mix: player option, club
yeah,
option, UFA,
yeah,
RFA.
yep, yep. So, or and there should be an all, I think.
Oh, all types. I missed it.
Yeah, if you do
I
all
missed it.
types, yeah, there we go. There's the better list because now we got like LeBron and Paul George and
Right.
Kawhi and all these guys who have options
But
on
we
there.
look at these and we're expecting, like
That's exactly
extensions. We're
it.
expecting,
Yeah,
Gobert's not going to
extensions or
decline that up,
re-signings.
all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's funny enough. You have the cursor right next to the first guy who might actually be a real free agent target, Pascal Siakam.
Uh huh.
Right, he could be the first real one, I think, or maybe Tobias Harris up
Hmm.
above him potentially too. Because if we're saying Philly's going to clear the deck, so we're just in a little bit of a different spot with this. I think you might have 2 years selected too, because like Mitchell and Tatum shouldn't be on there just yet, but that's fine. We'll play with all that stuff. But
Yeah.
this is these pages are all still a work in progress because obviously we're roughly what
We're a ways
7 months
away from
out,
that.
8 months away from this mattering. So, but
The,
not
the
a great free
point,
agent class.
yeah, that's really the point, is that when we
Yeah.
look and we see that there's not a lot of teams with a lot of free agent dollars, that's also because there's not a lot of players that you'd want to spend those free agent dollars on. Teams can see that when they're looking forward. And so they're saying, well, yeah, I mean, hey, should we give this guy money going into this year? Well, let's look. What's the opportunity cost? What's out there in free agency? Oh, there's not much. Yeah, let's go ahead and pay the guy because we're not losing out on much on the free agent market. So that's a factor in the decision making as well. Again, the NBA is becoming more and more extension and trade based. That's just kind of the way things are
Yeah.
right now. So seeing that it's a quote unquote weak free agent class, not necessarily a surprise, doesn't mean it's going to be an uneventful summer. Just means it's going to be more trades and things like that, which again has become the way of the NBA
Mhm.
world.
And in a lot of ways, trades are sometimes even more fun because it's guaranteed to impact two teams.
Uh huh.
And sometimes even more. It's guaranteed to impact at least one player, generally multiple players. So, sometimes trades are a lot more fun to break down. Free agent signings are, of course, fun. We'll, of course, have free agent signings.
Sure.
Sign in trades will be a bigger deal, I think, now because you're going to see some guys go. But it is important. This is where I want to kind of just talk a little bit more about the other side of this, right? We went through the 7 teams that could have cap space.
Mm-hmm.
I project 9 teams to be at or above the second apron. So like bumping up against that. So that's roughly a third of the league
Right.
will be, basically they're not doing much. Like it's going to be pretty limited for what they do. And it's important to remember when we hit next off season, those teams, the restrictions really start coming in hard on them. So the trade rules change. They can only send out 100% of the salary. They only bring back 100% of salary that they send out. They can also not aggregate together. So if you send out a 30 million player, you can't then add a 10 million player to it to go get a 40 million player. You can send out 130 million player and bring back 30 million or less in a trade. You can't sign anything except your own draft picks, re-sign your own players, or sign players to minimum contracts. So you're just in a spot where those teams are going to be pretty limited in the things they can do. And I'll just rattle off very quickly the list of those teams. It's all the heavy hitters that you
Yeah.
expect: the Celtics, the Nuggets, the Warriors, the Clippers, the Lakers, the Grizzlies, the Bucks, the Timberwolves, and the Suns. And you saw different ways of getting there, right? The Celtics, the Suns, they loaded up this summer to go get players. The Lakers they're up against it through re-signing guys.
Yep.
The Lakers could end up well under that if some player option decisions go a different way or guys
Mm-hmm.
leave town or whatever. They built in some flexibility, the way they structured a lot of their contracts with that. But then you have teams like the Grizzlies and the Timberwolves. They're new to this kind of area of living in the NBA, and it's all through the extensions that they've signed. They've locked up a lot of their own players over the years, and then added some salary on top of that. So in the Wolves case, they locked up Towns, Edwards, McDaniels, but also added Gobert's salary on top of it. In the Grizzlies case, they extended Jackson, Morant, Bain, but then added guys like Marcus Smart and Steven Adams. Those
Mm-hmm.
aren't backbreaking contracts by any means, but those are 12 million, 19 million, that starts to add up. And that's how you end up with those teams dancing around that second apron as a super tax team there. So it's there. If anybody is really interested and it's like, I got to know where my team is, where are the Chicago Bulls? What does Keith say? Go look. It's on Spot Track. You can find it right on the main page. If you just open up Spot Track, it's the first article there, or on my Twitter timeline, you can find it, the article linked as well. And I do write about all 30 teams, and where I project them to be. Is some will be a non-taxpayer team and those kind of things with all that. So that's where all of this is kind of driving out of, with this. And again, I can't preface this enough. Initial. It's
Yes.
November 8th. This just came out today. So a lot will change and we'll update it. The next big update will be after the trade deadline. Now that's when we do another big update.
Right. Teams make their
with that.
moves.
I don't know if this is the year all of a sudden everybody makes a million trades on January 1st. We'll update it then, but probably be after the trade deadline. But I'd like to have a baseline going in so that if we talk about Philadelphia, we can say, Philly was targeting to have about 40 million in cap space, but now they've traded for player X who makes 35 million and is on the books for 40 next year. Now that's why they're not going to have that cap space next year because they're spending it now. So you always want to have a baseline to work out of. And now that's really what this is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So this is just kind of gives you an early idea while understanding that things are going to change because that's the way it works.
We hope
in
for
the
us
NBA.
a lot.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. It'll make things even more exciting. All right, everybody. Well, I think that about wraps things up for today. Again, make sure you do subscribe to the NBA Front Office Show over here on YouTube. Don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts as well. Keith, feel better, and we'll be back at it again tomorrow. Till then, everybody, see ya and stay safe.